The hum of the building was the only sound left alive that night. Halifax in late autumn had a way of turning silence into something heavy, almost visible, mist pooling at the base of glass towers, streetlights flickering in rhythm with the rain. Inside the lobby of the Ward and Bright headquarters, the fluorescent lights hummed like tired bees. Noah Brooks sat behind the reception desk, uniform pressed but frayed at the collar, a thermos of coffee cooling at his elbow. The world outside slept. His shift, as always, was just beginning. He checked the monitors, empty hallways, the soft pulse of the elevator light, the steady rotation of the security camera in the parking level. At 38, Noah had grown used to the rhythm of the night, the quiet hum of machines, the echo of his own footsteps, and the thought of his daughter, Clara, asleep back home in their small apartment near Barrington Street. She always asked him before bed, "Do the buildings get lonely at night?" He'd smile and say, "Not when someone's there to keep the lights on." The elevator pinged unexpectedly. Noah straightened. No one ever came in at midnight unless something had gone wrong. A moment later, the doors opened, and Elena Ward stepped out. A flash of soft wool coat and messy hair, phone clutched tight, heels clicking against the tile. She looked like she'd been running on fumes, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but her posture still carried that kind of polished grace that comes from years of boardrooms and press conferences. Noah stood. "Evening, ma'am." She stopped halfway across the lobby, startled. "You still here this late?" He gave a small, easy smile. "Someone's got to keep the lights on." For a second, her shoulders relaxed. "Right," she murmured, glancing towards the windows where rain streaked down the glass. "Of course." She hesitated, like she was deciding whether to stay or keep walking. Then, with a sigh, she tucked her phone into her coat pocket. "Sorry to bother you. My car's down in the garage. Door won't unlock. Something with the key fob, maybe. I just need to make sure it's not dead." Noah nodded. "You want me to take a look?" Her lips parted as if to protest. "I can handle it." But then she caught the reflection of herself in the glass. Soaked, tired, utterly done with pretending. "If it's not too much trouble," she said quietly. He grabbed his keys and flashlight. "Not at all." They rode the elevator down together. The metallic hum filled the silence between them. She glanced sideways at him once, curious. She'd seen him before, passing in the elevator, polite nods at the end of long days, but never really looked at him. His calmness unsettled her. No small talk, no hidden agenda, just presence. The garage was half lit, concrete echoing with the sound of rain seeping through the vents. Her car, a sleek silver hybrid, waited near the far column. Noah crouched beside it, testing the handle then the lock. "Battery's fine," he said. "Just jammed. Happens when the moisture gets into the mechanism." Elena hovered a few feet away, arms folded. "You know cars, too?" He shrugged. "A little of everything. Used to fix HVACs before the layoffs. Security's steadier." He tugged gently on the handle, pressed the fob again, then with a low click, the door gave way. "There we go." "Wow," she exhaled, half laughing. "You actually did it." He stepped back, brushing rain from his sleeve. "Just patience and a flashlight. Most problems listen if you don't shout at them." Her smile faded as quickly as it came. The rain grew louder, hammering the metal ducts above them. She stared at him like she was about to say something, and then didn't. Instead, she leaned against the car, watching her reflection ripple across the wet concrete. "You all right, Ms. Ward?" he asked gently. Elena's voice came out softer than she intended. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's plan? Like you followed every rule and still ended up lost?" He didn't answer right away. The hum of rain filled the pause. "Yeah," he said finally. "Sometimes it's not the plan that's wrong. It's just the room you're standing in." She looked up, studying him. In that moment, the poised PR executive seemed to slip away, replaced by a woman holding herself together with thread. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I need someone real to walk into a room with me this weekend," she said. "My ex is getting married." Noah blinked, caught between confusion and disbelief. You're joking, right? I wish I were. She gave a short, humorless laugh. It's a black tie thing in Toronto, the kind of event where everyone pretends to care about philanthropy while calculating each other's worth. He stared at her. And you want me there? I don't know, she admitted, rubbing her temples. Maybe I'm tired of the same polished faces and hollow smiles. Maybe I just need to remember what real looks like for one night. Noah's first instinct was to laugh it off, but her eyes stopped him. Tired, raw, but steady. She wasn't playing. Look, Miss Ward, I'm just the night guy. I'm not exactly... Exactly what? She interrupted, a faint edge in her voice. Not corporate enough? Not comfortable around people who think they own the world? He met her gaze evenly. That about sums it up. Good, she said. Then you'll fit right in. For the first time, he smiled, genuinely amused. You realize how crazy that sounds? I do. She brushed a raindrop from her sleeve. But the truth is, everyone at that wedding already knows how I failed. They just don't know how I'm standing again. I'd rather walk in with someone who's not pretending. The elevator doors behind them slid open again, spilling a rectangle of light across the wet floor. She moved toward it, pausing just before stepping inside. Think about it, she said over her shoulder. You'd be doing me a favor, maybe doing yourself one too. He watched her go, the echo of her heels fading into the hum of the elevator. The garage returned to its usual quiet. Only the drip of rain, the faint smell of oil, and the strange weight of her words lingering in the air. Noah leaned against her car for a long moment, staring at the reflection of the fluorescent lights, rippling on the wet concrete. A man like him didn't belong in rooms filled with champagne and silk, but something about her tone, tired yet unbroken, stuck with him. By the time he returned to the lobby, his coffee was cold. He sat, staring at the security monitors, but his mind wasn't on them anymore. Someone real, she'd said. Through the glass doors, Halifax harbor lights flickered in the distance, scattered like tiny constellations on the water. The clock read 12:47 a.m., another long night ahead. He took a slow sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding him. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that maybe, for once, the night shift wasn't the only thing worth staying awake for. Stay till the end. The story always changes when the lights come back on. Dawn came slow over Halifax, spilling light like honey across the small kitchen where Noah Brooks stood, spatula in hand. The scent of toast and scrambled eggs filled the room. His apartment wasn't much. Second floor, above a laundromat, narrow hall, peeling paint. But it carried a warmth that came from habit and love. On the fridge, drawings were taped in crooked rows. A purple lighthouse, a stick figure family. The word Dad, written in letters, too big for the page. He flipped the eggs, humming quietly to an old Motown tune drifting from the radio. From the bedroom came the sound of tiny feet hitting the floor, then a sleepy voice. Daddy? Morning, Clara. The girl appeared in the doorway, her hair a wild halo of curls, still tangled from sleep. She dragged her blanket like a cape, 9 years old and already too curious for her own good. She climbed onto a chair, nose wrinkling at the smell of coffee. You're up early, Noah said, sliding her plate across the table. You were making noise, she mumbled, between yawns. And it's Saturday. Pancakes are supposed to happen on Saturdays. He chuckled. Consider this the healthy version. Clara poked her fork into the egg suspiciously. You say that every week, he smiled, pouring juice into her cup. The moment felt ordinary, safe. But as he reached for his jacket, something heavy brushed his fingers, a crisp envelope, still tucked inside the breast pocket from last night. The wedding invitation, white card, gold lettering, too formal to touch. For a moment, he just stared at it. The name, Elena Ward, embossed at the corner. He remembered her face in the garage light, tired, proud, too honest, for the world she lived in. Daddy? He looked up. Clara's eyes were fixed on him, wide and curious. Why are you thinking so hard? Noah folded the card back into the envelope. trying for nonchalance. Someone asked me for a favor. What kind of favor? The kind that involves dressing up, he said, half teasing, and pretending to be somebody's date. Clara's fork froze midair. You, like a girlfriend thing? He laughed. Not exactly. More like a stand-in. She squinted, considering this. For what? For a wedding. Are you getting married? He nearly choked on his coffee. Definitely not. Then who is? He sighed, ruffling her curls. A lady from work. Sort of. Clara leaned on her elbows, studying his face like she could read the rest of the story there. You like her? He shook his head quickly. It's not about that. But even as he said it, something flickered behind his calm expression. The invitation still sat on the counter, gleaming like a dare. After breakfast, he braided her hair the way her mother used to, 3 neat strands, woven tight and smooth. It was the only part of the morning that ever slowed him down. Clara hummed softly while he worked, her small hands clutching a crayon drawing she'd made at school, the two of them standing under a streetlight, the caption reading, "Me and Dad safe." You did good with this one, he said quietly. She grinned at the mirror. It's us. You're holding a flashlight. He smiled faintly. Guess I do that a lot. When he finished, he kissed the top of her head and sent her to change into her weekend clothes. Alone again, he picked up the invitation. The time, the place, Toronto, Saturday evening, black tie. Everything about it screamed, don't belong. He imagined the room, people in tailored suits, crystal glasses clinking, the soft music of wealth. Then, Elena, standing somewhere in the middle of it, trying not to shrink. Her voice from last night echoed in his mind. I need someone real. Noah reached for his phone. He typed the message, erased it, typed again. I can't make it. But he didn't hit send. He pictured Clara's face, the way she'd said, safe. He started over. I'll do it. One condition. Clara comes too. He hesitated only a second before pressing send. The reply came almost immediately. Elena. Deal. I'll send you the details. Then a second message. Thank you, Noah. He exhaled, leaning against the counter. The sound of Clara singing in the other room floated through the apartment. Off-key, bright, grounding. That night, after he'd tucked her into bed, Noah sat by the window, mug in hand. Rain brushed softly against the glass, the same rhythm as the night before. He thought of Elena again, her hesitation, her stubborn pride, the quiet tremor in her voice when she said she was tired of pretending. It wasn't pity that stirred in him. It was recognition. They were both people holding their lives together with quiet dignity, both doing their best to stand in rooms that didn't want them. The next morning, Sunday sunlight slipped through thin curtains. Clara was already up, sorting through her tiny collection of hair ribbons. What are you doing, kiddo? Deciding what to wear for your pretend wedding. He laughed. It's not mine. But you're still going, right? She asked, head tilted. He hesitated. I think so. Then you need my help. You can't wear that old blue suit again. He smirked. That old blue suit's all I've got. She crossed her arms with mock authority. Then we'll make it fancy. I'll draw flowers on your tie. Let's not push our luck. They laughed, the easy rhythm of their mornings wrapping around them like sunlight. As she skipped away to feed the goldfish, Noah checked his phone again. The new message from Elena was waiting. Directions, schedule, a note that said, bring Clara's size. I'll handle the dress. He typed a reply. You don't have to do that. Her answer came before he could put the phone down. I know, I want to. He stared at the screen a moment longer, then slipped the phone into his pocket. The kettle whistled, and he poured hot water into his mug, steam curling upward like thought. Maybe this wasn't just about helping her face a room full of ghosts. Maybe it was about reminding himself that he still belonged in the story too. By mid-afternoon, the rain had cleared. Father and daughter stepped out into the brisk air, walking to the corner store for groceries. Clara held his hand, humming again, the same way her mother used to when Halifax mornings felt endless. Noah glanced at her, the sunlight catching the gold flecks in her brown eyes. He wondered what she'd think of Toronto, of the glittering people and the polished smiles. He wondered if she'd see through it faster than he ever could. "Daddy," she said suddenly, "if she's your friend, will she be my friend too?" He looked down at her and smiled. "I think she already is." When they returned home, Clara ran ahead to the apartment door, her backpack bouncing. Noah followed slower, the faintest hint of something unfamiliar tugging at him. Hope, maybe, or the start of a storm he didn't yet understand. He placed the invitation on the counter again, next to her drawing of the lighthouse. 2 pieces of paper, one about a world that excluded him, the other about one that kept him steady. He turned off the kitchen light, but the morning brightness lingered on the card's surface. And for the first time, it didn't look like an invitation to someone else's world. It looked like a test of his own. By the time the rented sedan rolled into Mont Bluff, the sky above Toronto was the color of warm brass. Late afternoon light sliding across rows of manicured trees and long driveways, paved with stone. The estate where the wedding was held wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Mont Bluff Mansion rose like a white marble crown at the edge of a quiet hill, fountains glimmering, strings of fairy lights already flickering to life. Inside the car, silence held for a beat too long. Noah Brooks adjusted the cuffs of his rental suit, the black fabric stiffer than what he was used to. Across from him, Elena Ward sat perfectly composed, in a gown the color of midnight sky, elegant yet understated. The soft blue fabric shimmered each time she turned, the same way her pulse must have shimmered under her skin. In the back seat, Clara kicked her legs, humming along to the faint tune from the car radio. "You nervous?" Noah asked. Elena's lips curved into something between a smirk and a sigh. "You're assuming I stopped being nervous long enough to notice?" He smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, you look like you're in charge." She gave a small, almost grateful laugh. "And you look like you've been guarding castles all your life." Clara leaned forward from the back. "You both look fancy," she announced, "but I like my dress more." Her lavender skirt puffed slightly as she twirled, earning a chuckle from Noah. "No competition there, kiddo. You win." As the car slowed to the valet line, a fleet of tuxedos and chiffons swirled past. Photographers snapped at the arriving guests. The air smelled of lilies and champagne. Noah opened his door, taking Clara's hand first before offering the other to Elena. Her fingers hesitated a moment before slipping into his. "Ready-us?" he asked. "Ask me again when it's over," she said, stepping out. Heads turned immediately. A black man in a rented suit, a child holding his hand, and the company's former PR director in a gown that whispered rebellion. It was enough to shift the temperature of the marble courtyard. The valet nodded stiffly. A woman in pearls lowered her sunglasses for a better look. Whispers trailed them like perfume. Noah felt it, the subtle tightening of air that followed him into every unfamiliar room. But he walked steady, his posture a quiet defiance. Clara squeezed his hand once, as if to say, "I've got you, Dad." Inside, the ballroom glowed with golden light. Crystal chandeliers spilled radiance over guests arranged like chess pieces. A string quartet played something delicate, unmemorable. Every laugh was perfectly modulated, every smile rehearsed. Elena stood taller, her chin lifted as she scanned the crowd. Then she froze. Across the room, Owen, her ex-husband, stood near the bar. His tuxedo fit as if it had been tailored by expectation itself. His hand rested lightly on the small of his new wife's back. The woman was tall, blonde, and carried herself with the serene composure of someone who had never been told no. Owen's eyes found Elena's. For a heartbeat, the noise of the room dulled. Then came the polite smile, the one that used to charm investors, the one she once mistook for warmth. Elena drew a slow breath. "Let's get this over with." Noah followed her through the crowd, his hand steady at the small of her back, the way she used to dream someone might stand beside her. People parted for them, smiling, nodding, whispering. A man with too much cologne leaned forward as they passed. "Excuse me," he said to Noah, a touch too loud. "Are you Elena's driver?" Noah paused. His answer came smooth and quiet. "No, haha," he said. "Her plus one." The man blinked, caught between embarrassment and confusion, and stepped aside. Elena bit back a laugh, her nerves untangling a little. They reached Owen. "Elena," he said, voice polished but strained. "You look unexpected." "Good to see you too, Owen," she replied evenly. "Congratulations." His gaze flicked to Noah, then to Clara, whose wide eyes were busy admiring the chandelier. "And this must be my plus one," she said, tone firm. "And his daughter, Clara." The new Mrs. Owen, her name apparently Lydia, leaned forward, her smile too practiced. "Well, aren't you adorable?" she said to Clara. Clara blinked up at her, tilting her head. "You smell like fancy soap." A few people nearby stifled laughs. Lydia's smile faltered for a second before she recovered. "Thank you, sweetheart." Owen's jaw tightened. "I didn't realize you'd be bringing company." "You didn't ask," Elena said. A silence pulsed between them, fragile as glass. Then Noah stepped in, voice calm but grounding. "We'll stay out of your way, promise." Owen's nod was curt. "Enjoy the evening." They turned away before the moment could sour further. Elena let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "You handled that like a pro," Noah said quietly. "I wanted to throw my drink at him," she replied under her breath. He smiled. "Then you handled it better than I would have." For the next hour they navigated the party's delicate terrain, polite conversations, the weight of observation, the invisible walls built by old money. Elena moved with calculated grace, though Noah could feel the tension radiating from her shoulders. "Why do they keep staring?" Clara whispered at one point. "Because you're the most interesting person here," Noah said, earning a giggle. When the orchestra shifted to a slow tune, the host's voice boomed from the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join us for the first dance of the evening." Elena turned to Noah. "We don't have to," she murmured. "We came this far," he said simply, offering his hand. She hesitated, then took it. They stepped onto the dance floor. Conversations dimmed slightly, replaced by the soft brush of strings. Noah led with an ease that surprised her, gentle, certain, protective. The crowd watched, pretending not to. Somewhere at the edge of her vision, Owen stood perfectly still, his smile frozen. For the first time that night, Elena stopped thinking. Her pulse slowed. Her laughter came back, quiet but real. Noah met her eyes, and she saw something there that steadied her. Recognition, not rescue. When the song ended, they stayed close a second longer than necessary. The applause was polite, uncertain. Then the music changed, and the spell broke. "Let's get some air," she said. Outside, the garden stretched behind the mansion, rows of trimmed hedges, rose arches, and a canopy of string lights swaying in the wind. The night smelled of wet grass and perfume. From the open doors behind them, the muffled hum of the party continued. Voices, laughter, a clink of glass. Elena slipped off her heels and carried them by the straps. "I forgot how suffocating that world feels," she murmured. "You seem to handle it fine," Noah said. "On the outside," she replied. "Inside, I was one question away from breaking something." He chuckled softly. "You didn't break. You burned bright enough they had to look away." She turned to him, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. "You really think so?" "I know so." Clara came running from the path, where she'd been chasing fireflies with a few other kids, her dress glowing under the lights. "Dad, Miss Elena, come see. The little ones light up when you whisper." Elena laughed, following her. The three of them stood in the middle of the garden, surrounded by flickers of gold darting through the air. Clara held up a cupped hand, whispering something secret, then released the tiny creature. "Magic," she said. Noah looked at his daughter, then at Elena. "Guess she's right." Elena's gaze drifted back toward the mansion. The grand windows, the distant shimmer of chandeliers, the echo of polite laughter. She exhaled. I walked through fire tonight, she said quietly, half to herself, half to him. And didn't get burned, Noah smiled, the corners of his eyes soft. Maybe that's what healing looks like. For a while neither spoke. The night held its breath around them. Clara twirled again under the lights, her laughter mingling with the faint sound of music drifting from inside. When they finally turned to leave, Elena glanced back one last time at the mansion. The lights glowed cold and beautiful, but the warmth was out here, in the dark garden, where truth felt simple. As they walked toward the car, the gravel crunching softly under their steps, Noah slipped his jacket over her shoulders. She didn't protest. The fabric smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Thank you, she said. For what? For showing up. He nodded. That's the easy part. She looked at him curious. And the hard part? He smiled faintly. Coming back. The car door closed behind them. From the rearview mirror, the mansion receded into the distance, its lights shrinking to pinpoints against the black sky. Ahead, the road wound downward toward the city, where life waited in smaller, truer rooms. Inside the car, Clara hummed herself to sleep, her head resting against Noah's arm. Elena watched them quietly, the corners of her mouth lifting. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like an outsider watching her own story. She was inside it, alive, imperfect, unafraid. The night train hummed steadily along the Atlantic route, the sound of steel and distance filling the quiet car. Elena Ward sat by the window, forehead resting lightly against the cool glass, watching the faint lights of Halifax flicker closer through a veil of fog. After 2 days in Toronto, 2 days of forced smiles and the echo of violins, home felt less like escape and more like a return to something she had forgotten how to hold. The city greeted her with its familiar chill. The wind off the harbor carried salt and memory. She took a taxi through downtown, past shuttered cafes and wet sidewalks that shimmered under street lamps. Her apartment building was the same as she'd left it. Modest, brick-faced, quiet. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. She flicked on a lamp, soft yellow light spilling across her living room. Her suitcase sat unopened by the door. She didn't need to unpack. The weight she carried wasn't in the fabric of her clothes, but somewhere deeper, in the silence, left after surviving something that once would have broken her. On the shelf above her desk sat a small wooden box. She hadn't touched it in years. It had belonged to her grandmother, May Ward, a community nurse who'd arrived from Trinidad in the 1960s with a suitcase, a stethoscope, and a promise to help where help was needed. Elena had kept the box sealed since May's funeral. Some part of her wasn't ready to hear the past speak. Tonight, she was. She lifted the lid. Inside, folded carefully, was a single envelope. Cream paper, edges yellowed by time. Her name written in a cursive hand she knew by heart. To Elena, when you're ready. Her breath caught. She sat down slowly, broke the seal, and unfolded the letter. The ink had faded to sepia, but the words still carried her grandmother's warmth. My darling girl, if you are reading this, it means life has pushed you far enough to make you question your own reflection. Let me remind you of what you're made of. You come from women who held others up when no one held them, from nurses who cleaned wounds the world refused to see, from hearts that stayed open even when doors were closed. Real power, Elena, is not how loud you are when people cheer. It's how true you are when no one's clapping. Keep your spine straight. Keep your kindness steady. And when you doubt yourself, remember this. Love that stands quietly is still strong enough to move mountains. I love you always. Grandma May Elena sat still for a long time, the letter trembling faintly in her hands. A single tear slid down her cheek, landing on the paper like punctuation. The words didn't make her cry because they hurt. They made her cry because they healed. She leaned back, closing her eyes. The sound of the wind through the window mixed with the hum of the city outside. Distant traffic, a ferry horn, life continuing. She imagined her grandmother walking the streets of Halifax in her white nurse's uniform, holding a thermos of tea, stopping at doorsteps where others were too proud to knock. The thought filled the apartment with a kind of sacred quiet. Across town, in a small second-floor apartment above the laundromat, Noah Brooks was tucking Clara into bed. The weekend had left them both tired, but lighter somehow. Clara's hair still smelled faintly of the lavender shampoo from the hotel, and her new purple dress hung neatly by the door, the hem flecked with bits of grass from Mont Bluff's garden. "Story time?" she murmured, curling under her blanket. He nodded, settling at the edge of her bed with an old book, its cover worn, corners soft. "You remember this one?" She grinned sleepily. "The Man with the Lantern?" "That's the one." He began to read, his voice low, carrying the rhythm of the sea outside their window. Long ago, when Halifax Harbor had no towers, no bright streetlights, there was a man who carried a lantern along the docks each night. He wasn't rich, and people often forgot his name. But he kept walking, rain or snow, making sure ships found their way to shore. Claire's eyes drooped. "Why'd he do it, Daddy? Nobody paid him." Noah smiled faintly. "Because the light still mattered, even when no one saw him." Her breathing slowed, soft and steady. He closed the book and brushed a hand through her curls. For a moment, he let himself be still, listening to the quiet hum of her dreams. Then, as always, he turned off the lamp, but left the hallway light on, the keeper of the light in his own way. Later that night, when the city had fallen completely silent, Noah sat by the kitchen window, sipping his usual black coffee gone lukewarm. He thought of Elena, not the polished version from the office, but the woman who had stood barefoot in that garden, whispering to fireflies like someone remembering how to breathe. The phone buzzed on the table. A message lit the screen. "Elena, you made that night bearable." He smiled, typing slower than he needed to. "Noah, glad I could help." A pause. Then her next message arrived. "Elena, coffee tomorrow?" He stared at it for a moment, the words simple yet weighty in their ordinariness. For two people who had walked through fire, coffee felt like the right beginning. He typed back, "Noah, I'll be there." When he set the phone down, the reflection in the glass showed the faint glow of the harbor lights outside. In another part of the city, Elena folded her grandmother's letter carefully, sliding it back into the wooden box like something sacred returned to its altar. Two homes, two lights burning quietly in the night. One from a man reading stories to his child. One from a woman rediscovering the wisdom that had built her bones. Halifax slept, wrapped in fog and faint moonlight, but somewhere between their windows, the same truth pulsed, steady and bright. Real power wasn't noise or wealth or applause. It was the quiet act of caring, the kind that asked for nothing, and in doing so, changed everything. The cafe by the harbor was half empty that morning, its wide windows fogged slightly from the chill rolling off the Atlantic. Outside, gulls drifted above the pier, their cries sharp and distant. Inside, the smell of roasted beans and salt air blended into something comforting, something that belonged to Halifax alone. Elena Ward sat by the window, her fingers wrapped around a mug that had gone lukewarm. She had arrived early, of course she had. Waiting was her habit, her armor. She'd been waiting all her life, she realized, for permission, for approval, for safety that never really came. When Noah Brooks walked in, the bell above the door chimed softly. He spotted her immediately, the same way one recognizes a steady light in fog. He wore his work jacket, his hands still rough from the night shift, but his smile, warm, unhurried, seemed to ease the tension in her shoulders. "You beat me here," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Old habit," she replied. "I used to arrive early, just to prove I belonged." He tilted his head. "And now?" "Now I think I just don't like surprises." The server came by with fresh coffee. Steam curled between them like an invitation. For a while, neither spoke. The harbor outside blinked in fragments of light, the world moving on quietly, as if nothing had changed. But something had. Elena finally broke the silence. I thought being small kept me safe, she said, eyes fixed on the window. Turns out, it only kept me invisible. Noah watched her carefully. Being small isn't weakness, he said. It's where truth lives. Big things are noisy. Truth needs quiet space to grow. She looked at him, surprised. You always talk like that? Only when the coffee's good. She laughed, an unguarded sound, like something released after years of holding its breath. Then a small voice piped up behind them. Daddy! Clara came running from the bakery counter, a paper bag in her hands and icing sugar on her nose. She stopped at the table, beaming. They gave me a cookie shaped like a pumpkin, Elena smiled so wide it startled her. A pumpkin cookie? Let me see. Clara proudly held it up. It's for sharing. Noah raised an eyebrow. Since when? Since right now, Clara said, breaking it in half. She offered the bigger piece to Elena. Elena accepted, laughing. Thank you, partner. Clara nodded solemnly, as if sealing an agreement. She climbed into the seat beside her father, munching happily, unaware of how her presence changed the air, softened it, filled it, the tension that had followed Elena. Like a shadow since the wedding began to dissolve. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She was just there. When Clara was done with her cookie, she leaned over the table. Can we go to the market after this? The farmer one? Please? Noah looked at Elena. You up for that? Sure, she said, surprising herself. I haven't been in ages. Outside, the morning sun had broken through the mist. The walk to the farmer's market was short, just a few blocks down toward the waterfront. The stalls were alive with color. Pumpkins, jars of honey, fresh bread steaming in paper bags. Musicians played near the fountain, their fiddles weaving a cheerful melody through the hum of conversation. Clara darted ahead, pointing at everything. Look, Daddy, they have purple carrots, Noah chuckled. That's just them trying to look fancy. Elena picked up a small jar of jam, turning it in her hands. Do you ever miss the city? She asked. He shrugged. Sometimes, but I like seeing the same faces every morning. Feels like belonging, she nodded. I used to think belonging meant blending in. Now I think it's being seen and still staying true. Noah smiled, the kind of smile that made silence feel safe. Then you're finally home. They bought a small pumpkin at Clara's insistence. For pie, she declared, and maybe for carving later. By the time they reached Noah's apartment, the afternoon light had turned gold. Clara spread her school drawings across the table, humming as she colored, while the adults worked in the kitchen. The scent of roasted pumpkin filled the air, mingled with cinnamon and butter. Elena stood beside Noah, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back, holding a mixing bowl. You really know your way around a kitchen, she said. He grinned. Single dads learn fast. You either figure it out or live on cereal. She laughed again, this time quieter, warmer. You ever think about how ordinary things can feel like miracles when life slows down? Every day, he said, sliding the pie into the oven, ordinary is underrated. While they waited, Clara came over with a crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands under a big orange sun. That's us, she said proudly. Elena froze for a moment, the drawing glowing in her hands. Her throat tightened. We look happy, she said softly. Clara shrugged. Because we are. When the pie was done, they ate it warm, sitting on the couch, sharing one plate between the 3 of them. The pumpkin filling was too sweet, the crust uneven, but no one cared. Laughter filled the small apartment, echoing off the walls like a promise that didn't need to be spoken. Later, when the sun slipped below the harbor, Noah walked Elena to her car. The evening air was cool, tinged with salt. Streetlights flickered on one by one, painting a path of gold across the pavement. Thank you, she said. For the pie, he teased. For the quiet, she corrected. For making something that felt impossible seem simple. He nodded. You did most of that yourself. She looked up at him, eyes reflecting the faint glow of the street lamp. Maybe, but sometimes you need someone to remind you the world still has good in it. Then I'll keep reminding you, he said gently. A silence followed, not awkward, just full. Clara's voice broke it from the window above. Dad, don't forget to save me a piece for breakfast. Elena laughed, turning toward the sound. When she looked back, Noah was smiling. See, he said softly, you already belong to the noise of our mornings. She hesitated, then reached out, touching his hand briefly. I'll see you tomorrow, Noah. Coffee again? She smiled. Always. He watched as she drove away, the red of her taillights fading into the misty road. When he turned back toward the apartment, the scent of cinnamon still hung in the air. Inside, Clara's laughter spilled down the hall, bright and unguarded, and for the first time in years, Noah felt something settle quietly in his chest. Not excitement, not fear, but peace. The kind that came only when life stopped pretending to be perfect and simply allowed itself to be real. The smell of fresh paint and paper filled the Kensington community hub that Saturday morning. The old recreation hall, once echoing with the sounds of basketballs and empty afternoons, had been transformed. Bright posters on the walls, shelves of children's books donated by local families, and a makeshift stage where sunlight fell through tall windows. Elena Ward stood near the entrance, clutching a folder of notes, though she knew she wouldn't need them. Her nerves hummed under the surface, not fear exactly, but the kind of quiet pressure that comes with wanting to get something right. Across the room, Noah Brooks was setting up folding chairs, sleeves rolled to his elbows, voice low as he gave gentle directions to a group of teens from the youth program. Clara was helping too, carefully arranging books in neat stacks by color instead of title. Pink goes next to orange, she said, serious as a curator. Noah smiled. That's creative. Elena watched them, something soft, tugging at her chest. These small gestures, chairs, crayons, a child's voice, were what change really looked like. Not the speeches in glass towers she used to give, but this. Effort made visible. Community breathing again. The clock struck 10. Parents and kids began trickling in, shaking rain from coats, whispering greetings. Some came because of the posters around the neighborhood, others because Noah had invited them personally, walking door to door after his shifts. All right, he said quietly, nodding toward Elena. They're all yours. She stepped up to the small stage, smoothing her hands along the edge of her skirt. The chatter faded. Dozens of curious eyes, small, bright, unfiltered, looked up at her. Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice steady. My name's Elena, and today we're going to tell a story about courage. A ripple of attention passed through the crowd. It's not about superheroes, she continued. Not the kind that wear capes anyway. It's about the kind of courage we all carry inside, the quiet kind. She opened the first book, The Brave Raccoon and the River Crossing. The children leaned forward. Her voice found rhythm, rising and falling with the story's heartbeats. The raccoon who helped his forest friends cross the flooded bridge became a symbol of kindness, of seeing others even when afraid. When she finished, the room was silent for a breath, then erupted in applause too big for such a small space. A few little hands shot into the air, eager questions tumbling out. A boy in the front row, maybe 8, with curls like spun ink, raised his hand slowly. His voice was small but clear. Miss Elena, he asked, people like us can be lawyers too? The question stopped her. For a moment, the room blurred, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Elena knelt down, meeting his eyes. People like you, she said softly, can be anything you want. The world might take a little longer to see it, but you don't wait for them. You show them. His smile spread slowly, uncertain but real, the kind that could change the course of a life. From the back, Noah stood still, watching. Pride filled his chest. Not the loud kind, but the deep, anchoring kind. The kind that said, this is why we keep showing up. The session went on. They read another story, then another, until the children's laughter filled every corner of the hall. Some sat cross-legged on the floor, Others leaned against their parents, eyes bright. The walls that usually carried the weight of old community fatigue now hummed with energy. Afterward, the parents lined up to thank her. One woman, mid-40s, coat still damp from rain, took Elena's hand. "My son needed to see someone like you up there," she said quietly. "He's been struggling at school. Today, he saw himself in you." Elena's throat tightened. "Thank you for bringing him," she managed. "That means more than you know." When the crowd finally began to thin, Elena stepped aside to breathe. Noah joined her, leaning against the wall beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, though her eyes were glassy. "I thought I came here to read a story. Turns out, I needed to hear one too." Noah tilted his head, waiting. She looked toward the stage, where Clara and a few kids were now stacking books. "I spent years talking about empowerment in conference rooms, full of people who didn't need empowering," she said. "And today, in a room full of kids who did, I finally felt like I was doing something real." Noah smiled. "You were." She turned to him. "You started this, didn't you? The community days, the book drives." He shrugged. "I just wanted a place where people could show up as themselves, where no one had to pretend they belonged." "That's exactly what belonging means," she said quietly. Across the room, a few of the teens Noah had been mentoring were taking down folding chairs, still joking among themselves. One of them, a tall boy named Devin, called out, "Mr. Brooks, we're doing the cleanup right? "You're doing great," Noah said, waving. Then, softer to Elena, "They used to skip class, hang out behind the bus stop. Now they're arguing about recycling bins. I'll take that as progress." Elena laughed through the ache in her chest. "You have a gift, Noah. You make people believe they matter." He looked at her then, eyes steady. "I think we both do. Just took us a while to find the right room." She smiled. The phrase echoed her grandmother's letter. "Real power is how true you are when no one's clapping." She didn't need applause. This room was enough. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. The children were filing out with paper bags full of crayons and secondhand books. A few waved goodbye to her, calling her Miss Elena in voices too loud, too joyful to ignore. Clara ran up, face flushed from excitement. "Dad, Miss Elena? Look what they gave me." She held up a sticker that said, "Community Helper." "That suits you," Elena said, crouching beside her. "You were the best assistant I could have asked for." Clara grinned. "Can we do it again next week?" Noah and Elena exchanged a glance, one of those wordless, quiet agreements that said, "Of course we will." When the last family had gone, the three of them stayed behind to tidy up. The hall was quieter now, the echo of laughter fading into soft stillness. Elena gathered a few leftover crayons and placed them in a box. "You know," Noah said after a while, "I saw you up there today. Really saw you." She turned to him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You weren't trying to fit in," he said simply. "You were just home." She looked around the room, the worn floors, the faded mural of a sunrise, the smell of wet coats and sugar cookies, and realized he was right. For the first time, she wasn't standing on the outside of a world built by others. She was helping build one herself. As they locked up and stepped out into the evening light, a double rainbow arched faintly over the harbor. Clara gasped, "Look, 2 of them!" Alana smiled. "Maybe that means something good." Noah nodded. "It means we keep going." They walked together toward the car, the sound of rainwater trickling through gutters, the city glimmering in the distance. Behind them, the community hall lights dimmed, leaving only a warm glow through the windows, a soft reminder that small rooms could hold the biggest change. That night, as Elena lay in bed, the sound of children's laughter still echoed in her mind. For once, she didn't feel like she was chasing redemption. She felt like she had arrived, and across town, Noah sat by the window, watching Clara draw stick figures of their reading day. Underneath, in bold purple crayon, she had written, "We all belong here." He smiled, folded the paper carefully, and taped it to the fridge. In a world that too often demanded noise, Today had whispered something stronger, that being seen and being respected were not privileges reserved for the few, but promises everyone deserved to keep. The following Saturday, the Kensington Community Hub was livelier than ever. The air was thick with the smell of baked muffins and wet coats, and laughter spilled out through the open doors. Another reading event was underway, this time organized by a small team of parents and volunteers who had been inspired by Elena's last session. Elena Ward stood at the front of the room, arranging a few picture books on the table. Noah Brooks helped set up chairs, while Clara darted between rows, handing out coloring sheets. Outside, rain fell in fine, silvery lines that made the world look softer. Inside, it was all warmth, a hum of community, the kind that takes root quietly and grows stronger each week. Elena was mid-sentence, reading a story about a city that learned to share its light, when she saw a familiar face standing in the doorway. The sight made her voice catch for half a second. Veronica Ward, her former mother-in-law, Owen's mother, the woman who once told her she was too ambitious for her own good. Veronica stood perfectly composed, as always. A pearl necklace, gray-tailored coat, posture regal and restrained. But there was something else too. Curiosity, perhaps, or discomfort. She held a folded umbrella like a shield. Noah noticed the flicker of tension in Elena's shoulders and followed her gaze. He didn't know the woman, but he knew the look. The quiet panic of someone facing a ghost from their old life. Without missing a beat, Elena smiled and continued reading. Her voice steadied, even softened. By the time she finished, the kids clapped, and the parents joined in. When the applause faded, she looked up again. Veronica was still there, unmoving, her expression unreadable. Noah leaned toward Elena, murmuring, "Friend of yours?" Elena exhaled slowly. "Something like that." After the session, as parents helped their children pack up crayons and coats, Veronica stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly on the floor, echoing against the laughter of departing families. "Elena," she said, her tone precise, almost formal, "I didn't expect to find you here." Elena smiled politely. "Halifax is smaller than it seems." Veronica's gaze swept over the room, the mismatched chairs, the half-empty coffee cups, the chalk drawing of a rainbow on the whiteboard. "You're running this?" "Not alone," Elenov replied. "It's a community project. Noah started it." "Actually," she gestured toward him. Veronica's eyes followed the motion and landed on Noah, who was kneeling to help Clara zip up her backpack. The sight seemed to surprise her, the gentle way he tied Clara's scarf, the patience in his movements. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, turning back, "I remember you talking about programs like this," she said, almost to herself. "Owen used to think they were sentimental." Elena met her eyes. "Maybe sentiment is what people need right now." Veronica's lips curved faintly, though not quite into a smile. "You always had a way with words." "I learned to back them up with action," Elena said. Noah approached, sensing the tension but carrying his usual calm. "Hi there," he said kindly. "I'm Noah. You must be a friend of Elena's." Veronica hesitated, as if weighing how much truth to offer. "Something like that," she echoed. Clara piped up from behind him. "We read 3 stories today. Miss Elena made all the kids say what they liked most." Veronica looked down, caught off guard by the directness of the child. "And what did you like most?" Clara grinned. "That everyone got to talk, even the shy ones." For the first time, Veronica's features softened. "That sounds lovely," Noah smiled. "We'll be hosting more sessions. You're welcome to come back." Her eyes flickered between them. The warmth, the ease, the unspoken rhythm of people who trusted each other. Then she nodded once, and tightly. "Perhaps I will." 3 days later, an envelope appeared in Elena's mailbox. Inside was a cream-colored invitation. Tea, Thursday, 2 p.m., at the Ward House. VW. Elena stared at it for a long time, torn between curiosity and caution. Then, without quite knowing why, she said yes. The ward house sat high above the harbor, a relic of Halifax's old wealth. Marble floors, oil portraits, the faint scent of roses and old wood. Elena hadn't stepped inside in years. The last time she was here, she had been someone else, a corporate wife, learning which forks to use and which silences to keep. Veronica was waiting in the sunroom, seated by a small table laid with fine china. Outside, seagulls wheeled against a pale sky. "I didn't think you'd come," Veronica said. "I wasn't sure I would," Elena admitted, sitting down. A maid poured tea, the ritual precise and quiet. The air felt heavy with unspoken history. Veronica studied her for a moment. "You seem different?" "I hope that's a compliment." "It is," Veronica said. Then, after a pause, "I went to your reading last week. I didn't expect to stay the whole time." Elna smiled slightly. "You stayed for all 3 stories." "I did." Veronica stirred her tea slowly. "And I saw the way the children looked at you, and the way that man, Noah, looked at both of you." Elena's expression stayed calm. "He's a good man." "I can see." "That." Veronica's tone was thoughtful, almost reluctant. "You know, I used to think inclusion was charity, something polite people did to ease their guilt. But now," she trailed off, looking toward the window where the harbor shimmered. "Now I think it's courage." Elena felt something shift, not just in the room, but in the space between who they had been and who they were now. She set her cup down gently. "And you just showed it." Veronica blinked, a small, genuine laugh escaping her. "Perhaps." For a moment the 2 women sat in silence, not as former in-laws or adversaries, but as 2 people who had finally learned how to listen. Outside, the wind rattled the glass, carrying the smell of sea salt through the cracks. "I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, Elena," Veronica said quietly. "I think, maybe I misjudged you. Maybe all of us did." Elena looked down at her hands, then back up. "We all did," she said. "Even me." When she left the ward house that afternoon, the air felt different, lighter somehow, as if forgiveness had found its way into the cracks of old stone. At the bottom of the hill, she saw Noah's car waiting, Clara in the back seat waving wildly. "Hey, teacher lady," Clara called. "We saved you a muffin." Elena laughed, sliding into the passenger seat. "You 2 always show up at the right time." Noah glanced at her, reading the subtle calm in her face. "How'd it go?" She smiled softly, the harbor light flickering across her features. "Better than I expected. I think a little ice finally melted today." Clara leaned forward, eyes bright. "Does that mean we can have hot chocolate to celebrate?" Elena laughed. "Yes, I think it does." As they drove away, the city stretched out ahead of them, not perfect, not simple, but somehow warmer. And behind them, high on the hill, the ward house stood bathed in afternoon sun, its windows gleaming like thawed glass. The morning of the harvest fair dawned golden and crisp, the kind of autumn day Halifax saved for its best moments. Maple leaves flamed red against the sky, and the schoolyard was alive with the buzz of children's laughter, the smell of apple cider, and the thump of a fiddle band tuning up by the gym doors. In the middle of it all stood a wooden booth trimmed with hand-painted signs that read, "Roots and Light." Mason jars filled with tiny pumpkins lined the counter, each one decorated by the kids from the Kensington Hub reading group. Drawings of families, trees, and stars fluttered from string lights like little prayers. Elena Ward knelt beside the display, fixing the last row of jars, while Clara Brooks sprinkled glitter on the welcome sign with serious focus. Noah was nearby, hauling boxes of muffins and cider bottles onto the table. His sleeves were rolled up, a dusting of flour on his forearm, evidence of an early morning spent baking. "That's the last of it," he said, setting the box down. "Unless we decide to sell my dignity for extra donations." Elena laughed, brushing a stray leaf from her coat. "You'd make a fortune." He grinned. "Don't tempt me." Clara looked up from her glitter-covered project. "This looks perfect," she said proudly. "We're going to win Best Booth." "We're not competing," Elena teased. "Then we'll still win," Clara declared. and both adults exchanged a look that was equal parts amusement and admiration. By mid-morning, the fair was in full swing. Parents strolled between booths, teachers waved, and a group of students played folk tunes on violins under a striped canopy. The air shimmered with sound and color, a patchwork of community stitched together by small hands and open hearts. Elena stood behind their table, greeting visitors, handing out muffins, explaining the project's name to curious parents. Roots and light? One asked. It's about where we come from, she said, smiling, and the light we choose to share forward. Across the yard, a car door closed. Elena turned and saw Veronica Ward approaching, dressed elegantly in a navy coat, holding a bouquet of golden chrysanthemums. The sight caught her off guard, not for the gesture, but for how natural it seemed now. Veronica stopped in front of the booth. I brought these, she said, her tone gentle but assured, for your table. Elena hesitated only a second before taking them. They're beautiful, thank you. I thought they might brighten the space, Veronica added, glancing at Noah and Clara. It already looks quite radiant. Noah smiled politely, sensing the weight of this moment, and reached for an empty vase. We can fix that right here. Clara clapped her hands. Now it's really roots and light. The laughter that followed was soft but real. Veronica smiled, a true, unguarded smile this time, before stepping aside to let a photographer take pictures of the display. The local paper had sent a reporter, a young woman with a notepad and a curious gleam in her eyes. She spoke with a few parents, took a few photos, and then approached Elena. Ms. Ward, I'm with the Halifax Chronicle. Could we do a quick interview? Of course, Elena said, smoothing her hair instinctively. What inspired this initiative? The reporter asked, gesturing toward the sign. Elena paused, looking around. Children painting pumpkins, parents laughing, the warmth of shared purpose glowing under the autumn sun. Her eyes drifted toward Noah, who was crouched beside Clara, helping her fix a crooked poster with patient care. Finally, she said softly, a single dad who reminded me what dignity looks like. The reporter looked up, intrigued. That's beautiful. Would you like to elaborate? Elena smiled faintly. Noah and his daughter showed me that strength isn't loud. It's steady. It's the way people show up for each other, even when no one's watching. That's what this is about, showing up. The reporter nodded, jotting notes, eyes warm with understanding. A few steps away, Noah had heard every word. He didn't interrupt, didn't even look her way at first. He just smiled quietly, tying off a string of balloons and letting the wind take them upward like tiny suns. Later, as the day unfolded, the fair swelled into its joyous rhythm, violin strings, laughter, the scent of cinnamon and hay. Elena found herself surrounded by people, parents thanking her, children tugging on her sleeve, volunteers asking for more flyers. Each thank you landed softly, like leaves settling on water. Noah moved easily among the crowd, shaking hands, sharing jokes. Clara darted between them, her lavender sweater glimmering in the light, her laughter bright as a bell. At one point, Veronica approached again, watching Clara show another girl how to use the glitter glue. She's quite remarkable, Veronica murmured. She gets that from her dad, Elena said. Veronica nodded. And maybe a little from you. The words landed gently, unexpected. Thank you, Elena said quietly. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, the fair began to wind down. Music softened, stalls emptied, and the last cups of cider grew cold. Elena stepped back from the booth, wiping her hands on a napkin, and took in the sight before her, laughter echoing, children waving goodbye, the table glowing under the string lights they'd hung that morning. Noah joined her, holding 2 steaming mugs of cider. You pulled it off. We pulled it off, she corrected. He handed her a mug. To Roots, he said. She smiled, clinking hers gently against his. And light. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Clara hand a leftover muffin to a little boy who'd dropped his. When he thanked her shyly, she grinned and said, We all share here. That's the rule. Elena's heart swelled at the simple truth of it. Veronica approached one last time before leaving, pulling her coat tighter against the cool wind. "It's a good thing you've built here," she said, her voice softer now. "It's, honest," Elena nodded. "That's all we ever wanted it to be." For a moment they stood side by side, looking out over the fading fair, the lanterns flickering, the laughter lingering. Then Veronica touched her arm lightly. "If you ever need help for the next event," she said, "call me." Elena turned to her, surprised but smiling. "I will." When Veronica walked away, her figure framed against the setting sun, it no longer felt like an ending. It felt like a beginning. As the final cleanup began, Noah and Elena worked quietly, their hands brushing now and then as they packed boxes. "She really showed up," Noah said. Elena nodded. "Maybe we all did." The air had cooled by then, and mist rolled gently off the harbor. The last note from the violin drifted across the playground, long and tender. Clara spun under the lights, her hair catching gold, her laughter carrying upward. Elena looked at Noah, her voice soft. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were helping me." He smiled. "Maybe we were both just finding our way home." She looked around, the booth, the lights, the flowers, the people who had come and stayed. "Home," she echoed. "Yeah, that's what it feels like." As night settled over Halifax, the lanterns flickered to life, casting gentle halos across the schoolyard. The roots and light signs swayed in the breeze, glowing faintly. And somewhere between the laughter, the music, and the quiet strength of two people who refused to give up on kindness, the world felt just a little more whole. The wind off Halifax Harbor carried the bite of early winter. Inside the Kensington Community Hub, Elena Ward sat across from two sleek representatives from Energy North, a corporate sponsor with polished smiles and perfect timing. "We love your program," one said, "but for our campaign, we'd like to tone down the themes about race and poverty. Keep it more uplifting." Elena blinked. "You mean less honest?" They smiled politely. "We just want everyone to relate." After they left, silence filled the room. It wasn't partnership, she felt. It was compromise. That night, over tea at their usual cafe, Elena told Noah Brooks everything. "They're offering a year of funding," she said. "All we'd have to do is stay quiet." Noah shook his head. "Hope without truth isn't hope. It's branding." "They'll call us ungrateful," she murmured. He met her eyes. "Your grandmother didn't raise you to shrink for approval." Later, at home, Elena opened her grandmother's letter again. "We don't shrink. We grow twice as wide." The next evening, the community panel on education and equity drew a full crowd. Energy North's logo gleamed across the stage. Elena stood tall at the podium. "We were asked to remove parts of our story," she began, "the parts that make people uncomfortable. But comfort isn't progress. Growth is. My grandmother said, 'We don't shrink. We grow twice as wide.' So that's what we'll do." Applause swelled like thunder. Then Noah stepped forward. His voice was low but steady. "I've seen people told they don't belong, but history doesn't heal by hiding it. It heals when we hold it together." The crowd rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. Afterward, in the quiet outside, Elena found him by the door. "You heard me?" she asked. "Every word," he said with a smile. They walked into the cold night, the lights of Halifax flickering behind them, proof that truth, spoken with courage, could still warm the world. Snow fell thick and soft over Halifax, quieting the city into a kind of peace only winter could bring. The streets were muffled in white, the harbor lights blurred behind curtains of frost. Inside the apartment, above the laundromat, warmth glowed like a steady heartbeat, the kind that hummed from people, not radiators. Clara Brooks knelt by the window, her curls haloed in gold from the Christmas lights. She was threading paper stars onto a string, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "Do you think it's too much glitter?" she asked, holding one up. Noah chuckled from the kitchen. "There's no such thing." Linnea Ward turned from the stove, where a pot of spiced cider was steaming. That's debatable, she teased. Half the hallway's sparkling thanks to her. It's festive, Clara said matter-of-factly. Festive means sparkle. The three of them laughed. The kind of laughter that came easy now, unforced, familiar, like a language they'd learned together. Outside, the snow kept falling, flakes drifting through the streetlight glow, while inside, time seemed to soften around them. Tonight wasn't just about the holiday. It was the community dinner, the last gathering of the year for the Roots and Light group, a night where no one dressed up, no speeches were made, no press arrived, just neighbors, just people. The kitchen filled with smells that belonged to a dozen stories. Noah's roast chicken, Mrs. Kim's dumplings, the O'Donnell's stew, and Elena's grandmother's cornbread recipe, pulled from a weathered notebook. Clara had insisted on making sugar cookies, and the counter was now dusted white with flour, like it had snowed indoors too. Did you light the candles, sweetheart? Elena asked. Almost, Clara said, standing on tiptoe to place the last one on the window ledge. There, now it looks like hope. Noah paused, taking in the sight, candles flickering against the glass, their reflections glowing in the snow outside. For a moment, he thought of the man he used to be, quiet, cautious, walking home through storms, and wondering if a light like this was meant for other people. Not anymore. There was a knock at the door. When Noah opened it, the hallway was full of noise, laughter, footsteps, the soft shuffle of boots against the mat. Mrs. Kim, the retired teacher from downstairs, appeared first with a steaming pot. Hot soup. Don't ask what's in it. It's love. Behind her came the O'Donnells, arms full of bread and stories, followed by Devon, one of the teenagers from the community program, awkward but proud, holding a tray of brownies he clearly hadn't baked alone. Soon, the small apartment was bursting with warmth, people filling every corner, balancing plates on laps, trading jokes, passing dishes. The air was thick with laughter, cinnamon, and something deeper, belonging. At one point, Elena stood near the window, looking out at the snow that painted the city in silence. She turned and saw Noah helping Mrs. Kim find a seat, Clara showing Devon how to hang paper snowflakes. And for the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She was home. Later, when the plates had emptied and the chatter softened, Clara tugged at Elena's sleeve. Can I read something? Of course, Elena said. Clara climbed onto a chair and held up a folded sheet of paper. Her voice, though small, carried through the room. It's a letter, she said, from one of the kids at the reading group. He said I could share it. She cleared her throat and began, Dear Miss Elena and Mr. Noah, I didn't think people like me mattered until I came to Roots and Light. You gave me light when I thought the world forgot me. Now I know I can be the one holding the lantern for someone else. Thank you for seeing me. The room went still. Even the candles seemed to pause their flicker. Elena's eyes stung, but she smiled through it. That's beautiful, Clara. Thank you for sharing. Clara beamed, proud. He spelled everything right, too. Laughter rippled through the room, gentle and cleansing. Then another knock came at the door, softer this time. When Noah opened it, a gust of cold air swept in, carrying the faint scent of apple and cloves. Veronica Ward stood there, bundled in a dark coat, holding a pie. I hope I'm not too late, she said, a little breathless. Elena blinked, then smiled. Never too late. Veronica hesitated on the threshold for just a moment. Old habits of distance, pride, history. But then Clara ran forward. Miss Veronica, come in before the pie freezes. That did it. Minutes later, Veronica was seated at the table, her pie placed among the other dishes. Noah poured her a mug of cider, and Elena slid a plate her way. For a while, conversation was light, about the snow, about Clara's cookie disaster, about the cat Mrs. Kim had smuggled into her apartment despite the lease. Then, as laughter rose again, Veronica looked around the room, at faces of every color, every age, and said softly, I used to think inclusion was a matter of kindness. Tonight, I see it's something braver than that. Elena met her gaze across the table. You found the courage to show up. That's all it ever takes. Veronica smiled. Then I'm glad I did. Dinner stretched into evening. Plates emptied. Candles burned low. Devon played a quiet tune on his violin. Clumsy but heartfelt. Mrs. Kim hummed along. Clara leaned her head against Noah's shoulder, eyelids drooping. Outside, snow fell heavier, blanketing the city in a hush that felt almost sacred. When the guests finally left, leaving behind warmth and crumbs and laughter, the apartment settled back into its quiet rhythm. Noah stood by the sink, sleeves rolled, washing dishes. Elena dried beside him. You realize, he said softly, this might be the first time I've ever seen Mrs. Kim laugh that hard. She nearly choked on a dumpling, Elena smiled. Worth it, he said. They finished the last dish in silence, the kind that doesn't need to be. Filled. Behind them, Clara slept on the couch, surrounded by strings of paper stars. Elena set down the towel and joined Noah by the window. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering footprints, softening everything it touched. The candle still burned on the sill, their glow reflecting across the frost, small circles of light against the endless white. Noah slipped an arm around her shoulders. Looks like a postcard, he murmured. She leaned into him. No, she said softly. It looks like home. A moment later, Clara stirred awake, sleepy-eyed, padding over to them. It's still snowing, she whispered. It's supposed to, Noah said. That's how the world remembers to rest. The three of them stood together at the window, their reflections blending in the glass. A man, a woman, a child, lit by candlelight and the hush of winter. From outside, their apartment looked like a lantern glowing in the snow, the light inside shaped like a heart. And as the night deepened, the narrator's words could almost be heard beneath the hum of the city and the sigh of falling snow. Home isn't made of rooms. It's made of the people who stay when the music stops.